very lucky to have the pleasure of having the rabbi here in the valley. I think the rabbi calls him Ma'amakin. Here every year. This now has been almost a minhag. We're lucky to have the rabbi here. This year, we're having the shiur, of course, here in Mishkan Torah. I wanted to thank Rabbi Akivi. This is where we come all the time. This is where it's happening. We have a lot of different programs. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for supporting. Just a couple of items about the programs that we have here all the time. Of course, we have the Monday night sushi, the Tuesday night, Wednesday night barbecue, Thursday night cholent, and of course, daf yomi every day. So please don't miss out. Different minyanim. We have all kinds of programs available for, I think 1 year we had, Baruch Hashem, 6 people getting married in the same year from the shul. Six of the young couples we have, Baruch Hashem. So very, very proud of our community. And please come here and support. Now, Rabbi Mansour, Baruch Hashem, does not need any introduction. Just wanted to say thank you, Rabbi, for coming here and giving us the words of Chizuk every year. Without further ado,
תזכו לשנים רבות, נעימות וטובות, ברשות רבנים חשובים, רב שליח ציבור, שיחיה לאורך ימים טובים וארוכים, ברשות הרבנים, כל אחד כפי כבודו, מעלתו. It is a big zechut for me to be here. I consider it a privilege, especially that we're in the Kollel. It's a place that's very dear to me. Wherever I travel in the world, I'm always most comfortable in the Kollel, because that's where I spend most of my wake hours, in the Kollel. So I feel very, very at home. I'm assuming that Monday night sushi and Wednesday night barbecue and Thursday night cholent. I know this is not a restaurant. I'm assuming that there are shiurim that are based around that, and that's just an enticement to get the people to come to the shiurim. You really shouldn't have to be enticed to come to shiurim. You should just come because you're supposed to do it. You don't need to be, drawn in and like a fish that needs to be chummed and and all sorts of gimmicks. You have to learn because you have to learn. You have to learn because there's Gan Eden, there's Gehinam, there's a responsibility. It's when we were young we needed the enticement. To go to the minyan, they give you an ice cream, they give you a raffle ticket, they have a youth minyan. But after a certain age, you're supposed to graduate from that juvenile mentality, and you're supposed to do things because it's the right thing, not like a seal because they're going to throw you a fish, and therefore you're going to get some sort of benefit. But I'm all for it if it is bringing one extra person to the Beit Midrash because he says, oh, you know what, I'll get a free roll of sushi or whatever it is they're giving out. If one person extra comes, matovu manaim. But again, my opinion is that it's not necessary. As an example, no one's getting anything here tonight. You came l'shem shamayim, and the reward is uncompromised because of that. So I came to say a Hidush here tonight. The Derash begins in a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara is actually at the end of Sukkah. It's a Gemara that's well known, but I came to say a Hidush on it tonight. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, it's a Braita. Ma'aseh b'Miriam bat Bilga. There was a girl, she was called Miriam bat Bilga. Her father actually was a Kohen, serving the Bet HaMikdash. Shehemira data. Well, she converted. Now, you all know you can't convert. If you're Jewish, if you're born Jewish, you die Jewish. She thought she converted, which means she was a renegade. And the Gemara says she went so far, and she renounced her Judaism, Shemira data, ve'alchan v'niset lesardiyot echad b'malchei Yevanim. She did the unimaginable. She intermarried. She intermarried to a Greek officer. V'shenechnesu Yevanim lahechal, when the Yevanim entered the temple to defile it, hayta miva'etet besandela al gabei mizbeach. She took her shoe and she started to pounce with her shoe on the mizbeach, on the altar. And she said, ve'amra Lucus, Lucus. She calls the Mizbeach in Greek, Lucus. But she says, Lucus is a Ze'ev. Ze'ev is a wolf. She refers to the altar as a wolf, and she says to it, Ad matai atam mechale mamonan shel Yisrael, v'yata omed alehem b'shat hadachak. Mizbeach, Mizbeach, Lucas, Lucas, until when are you going to devour the money of the Jewish people and you don't stand for them, you do nothing for them? For some reason, this girl had an axe to grind against the Mizbeach. And she refers to it in a disparaging language. Lucas, Lucas, the Maharsha on this Gemara says, why did she refer to the Mizbeach as a wolf? She says, because the wolf primarily eats sheep. And the primary korban that goes on the Mizbeach is the sheep. So she was referring to the Mizbeach, you're like a hungry wolf that just eats sheep all day long, and you don't stand for the Jewish people in their time of need. And she went and she took the shoe and she's banging on the, which clearly is a terrible avon to disparage the Mizbeach. I think if you look at the Sefer HaChinuch in the 41st mitzvah, he talks about the obligation to give kavod to the Mizbeach. Well, the Gemara goes on to say, when they heard what she did to the Mizbeach, kav'u et taba'ata v'satmu et halona. So they locked up that area where her father and the family used to serve. They put a padlock on the locker, and when the family came in to serve, they said, that's it, you're banned. Because the rabbis were putting a penalty against the entire family that she came from, her father. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Because she sinned, you punish the whole family? What did her father do? What did her mother do? Why should they be ousted from service if she has a chip against the Mizbeach? So the Gemara says, oh, from here you learn a lesson. Shuta di yinuka b'shuka, or the abu or the imeh. What a child does in the street, she must have learned it in the house. Which means these behavior patterns, you don't learn it in a vacuum. When a child behaves in a certain way or uses certain terminologies, they heard it probably from the father or the mother. So therefore the Hachamim traced back this attitude, this negative attitude towards the Mizbeach. They said, must be she heard it in the house. Therefore we're going to punish the father. He cannot serve in the temple anymore. Satmu et halona. They closed his window. This is the Gemara everybody knows. I came to ask a simple question here tonight. I don't know why I never asked it before. It's so simple, and I don't know if you could learn this Gemara properly without addressing this question. This is a girl, Miriam Bat Bilga. She intermarried. Now, once you intermarry, that's the point of no return. That's the biggest avon that somebody could commit as a Jew. According to some of the Rishonim, if somebody intermarries, the family doesn't sit for 7 days. They sit for 14 days. 7 days because you lost a child in this world, and 7 days because you lost them in Olam Haba as well. So after intermarriage, what else could be, what's the next avon that she could commit? Well, she went and she added a few pennies into the ante of sin, and she took her shoe and she hit the mizbeah. Now, compared to intermarriage, that's a misdemeanor. That's a technical foul. And when the rabbis heard what she did to the mizbeah, then they said, "That's it. We're going to penalize the whole family." And I say to Bono Shel Olam, Hakamim, why didn't you react when she intermarried? As if the Mizbeah conviction is worse than the intermarriage. It seems the rabbi, I'm not saying they were okay with it, but you don't see any reaction. She went and she renegated and she rebelled against God, and she went and she renounced her Judaism, and she marries a Greek officer, and the rabbis don't say anything. And the Bilga comes into the Beit Mikdash and serves like everything. But when they heard, oh, now you're fooling around with the Mizbeah, that's it. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. Now we're going to have to penalize the family. It seems to me that the rabbi's reaction was a delayed reaction. The reaction should have been much earlier. Just a question to have. All right, I hope we get back to it. But now we'll go to another discussion. There's a Gemara that you must have heard. The Gemara is at the end of Masechet Sotah. That Gemara is talking about what the final generation before Moshiach is going to look like. I have no doubt that we are in that generation. And if you look at that Mishnah, it gives you all the telltale signs what's going to go on right before Mashiach comes. I'm not going to go through the list, but if you read the list, you think you're reading today's newspaper. It's very, very relevant and very current. And that's why the Hakamim say, that's it. All the signs are there. The writing is on the wall. Well, at the end of the whole list of things that it says is going to happen before Mashiach comes, it says, Ve'en lanu al mi lehisha'en ela al avinu shebashamayim. And when that time comes, we're not going to be able to rely on anybody except our Father in heaven. The way I always understood it, it's going to be so bad, and it's going to be so difficult, like we're seeing today. Government cannot protect us. The military cannot protect us. Security can't protect us. The times are going to be so ominous. We're only going to be able to put our reliance on God. It's going to come a generation where they're going to say, Borei Olam, you're the only one that can get us out of this mess. You're the only one that can save us. That's the simple interpretation. But I asked a simple question. Is en lanu al mi lehisha'en ela al avinu shebashamayim something that's exclusive only to the final generation before Mashiach? And the generation before Mashiach, then you didn't have to rely on God? In every generation you have to rely on God. From Adam HaRishon until the present day. If you went 3,000 years ago and you told them, who must you rely on? They would say, Al Avinu Shebashamayim. So is that a telltale sign of Mashiach? That's something that's duty bound to every Jew in every generation. No, in the generation of Mashiach, then and the generation before, who else were you relying on? As if there was somebody else that we could put our reliance? Of course not. So how did you learn that Mishnah? That only before Mashiach comes, then you're stuck. Then you must put your reliance on Avinu Shebashamayim. And I may ask you another question. I didn't come to ask you 100 questions tonight. But I came to ask you a few questions in order to build up the derashah properly. And maybe this question that doesn't bother you, but these things bother me because since I'm asked to give derashot, when I look at these Gemariyot, I pay attention to every single word. Because the way the Gemara uses its terminology, that might be the key to a derashah. The words themselves might open up a key to new ideas. And my obligation is to try to present new ideas to the congregation. So I look at every single word very, very carefully to see if there's a nuance or there's a certain implication or an inference that we could make. Why does the Gemara refer to God as Avinu Shebashamayim? Now I agree, He is Avinu Shebashamayim. But the Gemara could have just said very simple, Ve'en lanu ela al mi lehisha'en ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Finish. En lanu al mi lehisha'en ela al Yudke Vavke, ela al Elokim, ela al Shakai. Why in this Gemara did it choose to refer to God as Avinu Shebashamayim? I'm not saying He is Avinu Shebashamayim. He is our Father in heaven. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the Gemara chose that reference, that terminology, Avinu Shebashamayim. Over the past couple of years, I've been reading a lot of the Sefarim of the Tzaddikim that come from the dynasty of Babov. If you could imagine that. I'm not a Hasid. My grandparents actually were born in Aleppo, Syria, in Halab. But I'm attracted to all different brands of Torah. And I've been given, the books of these rabbis. Kiddushat Zion, Kerem Shelomo, great rabbis. And they have great ways of looking at things. So what I'm going to tell you now comes from a rabbi called the Kerem Shelomo. It's from one of the Babov dynasties. They have the books, they're available. He quotes the Gemara in Shabbat, page Petet. Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel ben Nachmani, Amar Rav Yonatan, Ma'id Ichtiv, Ki ata avinu, Ki Avraham lo yeda'anu, V'Yisrael lo yakiranu. The pasuk is saying like this. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. At a certain point, the Jewish people are going to say, Toda Rabba. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kol na'am bara. Do I owe you anything for that? So, the Gemara says on the pasuk, Ki ata avinu, you are our father, Ki ata avinu. Avraham lo yeda'anu. Avraham doesn't know from us. V'Yisrael lo yakiranu. Yaakov Abinu is Israel, he doesn't recognize us. What is this pasuk talking about? I mean, there's going to come a time where the Jewish people are going to turn to one of the avot. I guess it's Yitzhak, because process of elimination, and they're going to tell Yitzhak, Ki ata avinu, you're our father. Avraham lo yeda'anu. Avraham doesn't want to know from us. V'Yisrael, which is Yaakov, lo yakiranu. He doesn't recognize us. What is this Gemara talking about? So the Gemara tells a story. The Gemara says, La'atid lavo. La'atid lavo means in the future before Mashiach comes. Our generation. Yomar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu le'Avraham. God's going to come to Avraham Abinu and say the following: Banecha hatuli. Your children are in contempt of sin. They've reached the tipping point. They have committed so much sins that I cannot tolerate it anymore. This is what God is going to ask or tell Avraham. And what's Avraham's reaction going to be? Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam yemahu al kedushat shemecha. If that's the case, they're hopeless. They should be erased on the sanctity of your name. Destroy them. Now, I don't know why Avraham is going to answer that. I don't have an answer for that tonight. I'm sorry. You'll ask your great rabbis. I thought Avraham Avinu was the Ish Hesed. And here, God tells him we're going to destroy Klal Yisrael. I mean, wasn't Avraham the one that defended the people of Sodom? He's negotiating with God, 50, 40, and here God says, the Jewish people are terrible. And Avraham Avinu says, yes, amen, ken yiratzon. Yemach al kedushat shemecha. Destroy them. Well, I wouldn't have expected that reaction from Avraham, but that's what the Gemara says. I'm open for suggestions. That's not the focus of my derash tonight. If somebody has a suggestion what Avraham was doing over here, somebody in a previous class said he was calling God's bluff. Okay, destroy them. Oh, I won't destroy them. I'm just okay, maybe that's the explanation. I'm not sure. So, God says Avraham is not helpful here. So let me go to Yaakov. Amar le Yaakov. Emar le Yaakov. Let me go to Yaakov Abinu. Dahavet et sa'ar gidul banim. Yaakov raised children, so he knew what it means to raise, difficult children. So maybe he'll have more mercy on Klal Yisrael. If shar de ba'ud rahame alayu, maybe he'll have more mercy on Klal Yisrael. Amar le, so he tells Yaakov, Banecha hatu, your children are in contempt. Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam, yemahu al kedushat shemecha. Same answer, yemahu. So the Gemara says, Amar, God says, Lo b'sabeh ta'ama velo b'dardeke etza. The elders don't have the right answer, and the youth don't have the right advice. I went to the elder one, Avraham, and he says, Yemahu. And I went to the youngest one, Yaakov, and he doesn't give me the right advice. There's only one left, Yitzhak Avinu. Now, mind you, Yitzhak is Midat Hadin. So the last father that you expect to defend us is Yitzhak. Yitzhak usually is strict judgment. That's probably why God went to him last. Because God for sure figures that, Yitzhak is not going to be the advocate in this case. Well, let's continue the Gemara and see what happens. Amar lo li Yitzhak. So God comes to Yitzhak. Banecha hatuli. Your children have sinned. Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam. Banai velo banecha. Now all of a sudden they're my children. They're my children, they're not your children? God Almighty, you forgot when you took them out of Egypt, you referred to the Jewish people as Beni. You called them my son. Not only did you call them my son, you called them Beni Bechori. You called them my oldest son. And now all of a sudden you abandon us and you come along, when they're good, you come along and say, oh, Beni Bechori. And now all of a sudden they make some sins and you come along and say, Baneka Atu. All of a sudden Yitzhak turns into a defense lawyer. He goes into emergency mode, damage control, and he starts to defend Klal Yisrael. So what do you mean? Banecha hatu. Banecha velo, banai velo banecha. And then he comes along and says, Ve'od kama hatu. What are we talking here? Let's get the details. How many sins are we talking? I want to see the numbers, Yitzhak says. Kama shenotav shel adam. So he starts to make an accounting. He says, well, what's the average lifespan? He says, the average lifespan, he says, Shiv'im shana. Let's take an average lifespan of 70 years. He says, well, Dal Esrim De lo anshat alayu. But we know that the Gemara holds that for the first 20 years, one is not liable for his sins. Which means there's no punishment for the 20 years. So up until 20, whatever he sinned, there's no punishment. So therefore, what are we talking now? 50 years? Well, Pashulu Hamshin, you're down to 50. Dal Chafed Delel Vata. Now, there's half a person's life, he's sleeping. He's in bed. Now, people are not sinning in bed. I mean, today is different, but he's talking in principle, person sleeping, he's sleeping. So you got to knock off another 25 years. So we're down to 25. So look at this, in 1 or 2 moves, he already is chopping the bill down. He said, first of all, it's not 70, and it's not 50, it's 25, and I'm not done yet, he says. Pashilu chafeh. You're left with 25. Dal talte sare upalga. Well, you got to knock off another 12 and a half years. Detzeluye umechal udbeta kiseh. Well, between people pray every day, something, and they got to eat, they go to the bathroom. So put all that together, and you can knock off another 12 and a half years. So we're down to 12 and a half years of sin. So he turns to God and says, Im ata sovelet kulam mutav. God, I think you could afford to pay the bill for 12 and a half years. Ve'im lav, and if you're not willing to foot the whole bill of 12 and a half years of sin, palga alay palga alecha. He says, I'm willing to split the bill. It seems Yitzhak had some chips, so he says, I'll kick in. We'll split the bill. I give you my credit card, you charge my credit card half, and your credit card half, and we'll pay the bill together. I'll pay for 6.25 years, you pay for 6.25 years, and balance zero. And then Yitzhak Abinu says, V'im temseh lomar kulam alay. And if God, you're going to say, no. I paid enough bills already for these kids. I've been paying bills since they were created, since the Egel, and I'm not paying any more for them. And if you're going to tell me, God, I have to pay the whole bill, he says, no problem. I can afford it. Ha kirivit nafshi kamach. I sacrificed my life for you. That day when you told my father to slaughter me, I was 37 years old, I wasn't a child, and he brought me to the Temple Mount, and I saw the wood, and I saw the knife, and I asked my father, where's the Korban? And my father said, Elohim Eloah Beni, you're the Korban. And I didn't question my father. I didn't tell him, maybe God said Yishmael, maybe it's not me, maybe he wants you to slaughter Yishmael, which is probable. But I didn't say that. And I went on the Mizbeach, and I put my neck out, and I was willing to sacrifice myself for you, God. And therefore he says, in that zechut that I did, Akedat Yitzhak, I can afford it. I have so much chips in my pocket, I have so much tickets, I have so much credit from that zechut, I can pay off the whole bill for Klal Yisrael, for every sin they ever made, and I don't need any help. I have a credit card bill or credit card that I can swipe and it'll pay everything. Unlimited. At that point, Klal Yisrael sees that who's going to save us at the end of time? Not Avraham, and not Yaakov. The father that's going to save us at the end of time is none other than Yitzhak Avinu. And that's what the pasuk means. The Jewish people are going to come along and say to Yitzhak, Ki ata Avinu, you're our father. Avraham lo yida'anu, Yisrael lo yakiranu. Ata Avinu, you're our father. You're the one that we can rely on. That's the Gemara. What does it mean, this Gemara, that Yitzhak Avinu can afford it? There's a very, very important lesson here. And this is what I came to talk to you about tonight. The lesson is the lesson of Mesirut Nefesh. Rabbeinu Ari writes that there's no greater power than when a Jew sacrifices himself for Kadosh Baruch Hu. When a person sacrifices, which is called Mesirut Nefesh, any sacrifice that he makes, anything that he gives up for Borei Olam, from his desires, from his will, from his temptation, from what he wants to do, and he overcomes that and he delivers that to God, that's called Mesirut Nefesh. The ultimate Mesirut Nefesh is to give your life for God. But even if it's not that extreme, any form of sacrifice to the Borei Olam, he says, brings down a tremendous shefa to the world. A shefa that is unmatched. And that's why he says when a person prays the Amidah, so you're going to ask for 18 things in the Amidah. Give me wisdom, give me teshuvah, give me geula, give me refuah, give me barakah. Every barakah is another item. It's a shopping list. So he says, but before you can merit all these requests, and most people don't know what I'm going to say now, there's one word in the Amidah that might be the most important word in the whole Amidah. When you get to the first barakah and you say, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. Rabbeinu Ari says when you say the word Be'ahava, you have to think in your mind, I'm accepting upon myself the 4 punishments of Bedin. Sekila, Serefa, Heneg, Baheneg. I'm accepting upon myself mentally. Physically, you're not doing that. You're not dying. But you say that even if it came to that, I'd be willing to accept all the 4 punishments of Beit Din. That's the kavanah in the Siddur of the Ari on the words Be'ahava. Yechaven limsor atzmo bedaled mitot Beit Din. I'll tell you how you do it. It's very easy. When you say Be'ahava, you think for a second and you say, even if I had to give my life up for God, I'm willing to give my life up for God. You're not giving your life up. You're doing it mentally. The Rabbeinu Ari says, even a mental Mesirut Nefesh creates such a shefa that all the requests now that you're going to ask for in the Amidah, the gates are opened. Yitzhak Avinu, he didn't just think about Mesirut Nefesh, he actually did it. He was on the Mizbeach. He didn't know that he's going to be called off the Mizbeach. He didn't have Parashat Vayera in front of him to read the script and say, okay, now get off the Mizbeach. I wasn't following a script. He doesn't know the end of the story. We know the end of the story, but he didn't know the end. He went in expecting to die. So the Gemara is telling you that the zechut of Yitzhak is the zechut of Mesirut Nefesh. And that merit is able to atone for all the sins of all of Klal Yisrael. Only have one problem with this Gemara. Yitzhak Avinu didn't moser nefesh. It was a failed attempt. I mean, he didn't give his life up. There's a great rabbi called the Megaleh Amukot. The Megaleh Amukot says, and you have to know this about Judaism, in Judaism, we don't go according to the results. We go according to the intention. And he says that since Yitzhak Avinu intended to give his life up, it's considered as if he gave his life up to the extent, we say every morning in the prayers, that God should look on the Kisei HaKavod, God should look at that spot called the Kisei HaKavod, at the ashes of Yitzhak. Says the Megaleh Amukot, there's no ashes. What do you mean the ashes of Yitzhak? There's no ashes. He jumped off the Mizbeach. So he says, since he intended to give his life up for God, God considers that if he did it, and therefore the ashes of Yitzhak are present by the Kisei HaKavod. V'tabit be'efaro. Look at the ashes. L'rachem alenu, have mercy on us. Now, that's very significant. Because there's a pasuk in the Torah that says, Parashat Bechukotai, God is talking. V'zacharti et biriti Yaakov. I'm going to remember Yaakov. Ve'af et biriti Yitzhak. And I'm going to remember Yitzhak. Or the covenant of Yitzhak. Ve'af et biriti Avraham is kor. By Yaakov it says, Ve'zacharti, I will remember. By Avraham it says, Iskor, I will remember. By Yitzhak it doesn't say, I will remember. You know why? Because God doesn't have to remember. He sees Yitzhak every day. It's in front of him. Avraham Zechuyot is a memory. Yaakov Abinu is a memory. But by Yitzhak Abinu, it's under the Kisei HaKavod. That's where God sits every day. You don't have to remember something that's in front of your eyes every single moment. That's the Mesirut Nefesh. And this Gemara is coming to tell us that at the end of time, the world is going to be, Klal Yisrael especially, sins up to here, and God's going to be fed up, and there's only going to be one thing that's going to save us. Mesirut Nefesh. Self-sacrifice. And here's where we go into our topic. There are many people that think that religion is supposed to be easy.
At 3 o'clock, we're going to charge you.
Okay, no, I'll pay. There are many people that think that religion is supposed to be easy. And once the religion becomes a little difficult, so that's it, they're out. If religion demands from them a little sacrifice, and they might have to give up of their sleep, they might have to give up of their pleasures and desires, they're not interested in it. They want it to be on an easy street. And that's a mistake, Rabotai. Nothing in life that's important comes easy. Does your businesses come easy? Does your education come easy? Raising your children comes easy. Anything that's important, does your health come easy? Anything that's significant takes effort and energy. But for some reason, we're willing to work and sacrifice in all areas of our life. But when it comes to religion, Judaism, it has to be on a silver platter, easy. And once they're ready to go and gets a little tough, we're surrender, we're out. And the thing that lacks in our generation is the Mesirut Nefesh. And that's the Gemara is saying is going to be the key to protect us at the end of time. La'atid lavo. La'atid lavo, it's going to be the midah of Yitzhak that protects us. Anna karivit nafshai kamach. I sacrifice my life. God is saying at the end of time, the midah of Yitzhak. But I'm concerned when we have a generation that is not willing to sacrifice anything for the Boreh. When it comes to the woman have a tremendous sacrifice, maybe even greater than the men. The sacrifice of the woman, according to the Hazon Ish, their greatest mitzvah is modesty, is sini'ut. I cannot appreciate their challenge, because when I go to the store, no matter what I buy, it's modest. Every suit in the store is modest. Every suit goes all the way down to my shoes. Every sport jacket goes to my wrist. It's only the color if it's suitable for a rabbi or not. But otherwise, I don't have to do anything to the suit to adjust it or make some sort of addition or extensions. It's suitable as it is. For men, the laws of modesty in dress at least are not such a hard challenge. But God bless our women, that every thing in the store is not made according to the standards of Torah, And whatever they buy, they have to adjust and add, and it's a great chat. That's Mesirut Nefesh. So the lady comes, oh, it's too difficult. And most of the society is not dressing like that anyway, and therefore I'm going to take the road of least resistance. And that's what everybody's looking for. Least resistance, the easy way out. And the easy way out might work in other generations, but in the generation before Mashiach, God's looking for one thing, Mesirut Nefesh. The midah of Yitzhak, that's the midah of La'atid Lavo. That's the only thing that's going to get us away from the filled box of sins. Therefore I say to the woman, continue your ways in your Mesirut Nefesh. This is what's going to save you. That's the biggest tikkun, nothing else. Nothing else. There are so many things today, especially a lot of imposters that come, probably visit this community as well, and they give you all sorts of nouveau religion ideas. Things that are, going to promise you all sorts of things and stuff. We don't have belief in these things. We believe in the old traditions. Tariag mitzvot. Somebody will come along and say, yes, you don't have to do anything, just put a red string around your wrist, and this will save you from all evil things. This will bring you tremendous parnasah. And I agree, it does bring parnasah to the one that sold it to you. But more than that, these things are not. And read this backwards, and read this forwards, and read this upside down. When ladies come to me and they say, Rabbi, we want a segula for shidduch, we want a segula, I usually carry, I didn't bring it to me from New York, I carry a button in my pocket, and I give them the button. I said, this is the biggest segula. What should we do with it? Cover a button over here. Put a button over here. They said, no, serious. I said, I'm serious. What do you think this? This is the biggest segula than anything. A snap, or a stitch, or a hook. These are the biggest segula. These are better than any kamiyah, better than any amulet. Oh, but it's too hot and it's too difficult. Hazak Baruch. It is. It is. I don't say no. I don't say no. But you want to get something valuable without sacrificing? And lucky that they're not asking us to sacrifice our lives, because if they would ask us to sacrifice our lives, we would have to do that also. But that's not our challenge in this generation. That was the challenge in Spain. That was the challenge in Europe. Here, Baruch Hashem, in America, nobody's asking you to give up your life for God. We're able to live, and we're able to tell the story about it. But nonetheless, this is our responsibility. But I'm not interested when people come and tell me it's too difficult. Where does it say that religion has to be easy? Where does it say that something so valuable like godliness has to come on the yellow brick road? And then when we come to the men and we tell them we have to study Torah, well, I work late at night and I wake up early in the morning. But for your leisure and for your social, you figure out how to make the time. For all the things that are important to you, for your sports and all the entertainment, then you're able to figure out how to steal time for the study of Torah. But when it comes to, and then when we come to the Beit Midrash, if the air conditioner is not 68.7 and the coffee is not perfect over there and the lights are, we can't learn like this. So this is a generation that's looking for every excuse. Maybe even if the air conditioner doesn't work one day, you moser nefesh, you roll up your sleeves and you study for God. And maybe if you had to give up a little breakfast and you had to give up a little of your social time and leisure time, that's Mesirut Nefesh, Rabotai. And I say to all of you, to keep Shabbat in this generation, it became a challenge. Although I look forward to Shabbat, I'm able to get rid of all my gadgets and I'm able to just move away from them. But today it's become an addiction. Today, a teenager, it's a big sacrifice if you tell him you cannot make a text on Shabbat. Oh, he's addicted to his phone. Woe to our generation that we can't even give God that. We can't even give God that we cannot text for 24 hours. Even that we're too cheap to give HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even that small amount of Mesirut Nefesh we can't do. We cannot limit ourselves from playing with our gadgets on Shabbat. Lo alenu velo alechem. This is the problem. Mesirut Nefesh. It's not the crowd over here, but everyone's the crowd. Today we have internet. An internet that's not filtered is an internet that will lead to avera. There's nothing to talk about. I did a survey. Every boy that came to me, or every girl that came to me, and I said, is your internet filtered with the proper filter? They said, no, I don't need it. I said, oh, I just have one question. Did you ever see something inappropriate? And everybody answered yes. Nobody had the guts to say they didn't see anything inappropriate. So therefore, Mesirut Nefesh. Oh, but the filter, it slows it down. Let that be your Mesirut Nefesh. Let that be the Akedat Yitzhak of our generation. Let that be the sacrifice. That's what the Kadosh Baruch Hu is looking for at the end of time. Not for the Midah of Avraham and not for the Midah of Yaakov. It's the Midah of Yitzhak. Anna karivit nafshai kamach. God says, I'm looking for the Mesirut Nefesh of Yitzhak in every way. Is this not Mesirut Nefesh what you're doing here tonight? That you come here on a weekday night, everybody has work tomorrow, the kids have school, everybody has responsibilities. And everybody comes in Mesirut, and God looks from Shamayim, says, Baruch Hashem, in 2016, there's still Mesirut Nefesh, there's still people that are willing to give up on themselves and give up their time and their energies to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And we're living in a very a sinful time. I've said in our congregation in New York, and I know this for a fact, that in our generation it is even worse than the generation of Sodom. And I have a proof. Sodom was a bad generation, but I have a proof that our generation was worse. Because I have to believe in my mind, as bad as Sodom was, and you'll forgive me for this, but as bad as Sodom was, they had separate bathrooms for men and women. I have to believe that. I have to believe that. I have no proof in the Midrash that says otherwise. They did a lot of other things. But at least they had that much they had. I mean, even Sodom didn't go that far. There's no Midrash that says they crossed that. And in our generation, even that becomes blurred. So we have a difficult time. And then we're asking the Kahal over here, we have to be above all that. And a generation that nobody wants to be bothered. It doesn't happen over here, I'm sure. But in New York, there was an article in one of our magazines. It was to the ladies they were talking to, I guess. Why hassle and cook for Shabbat? Call this number and they'll send you over all the food for Shabbat. Which means in this generation, cooking for Shabbat is a hassle. Why burden yourself in the kitchen to cook for Shabbat? It's a pain in the neck. Call this one number, and the men do it the same way. We have somebody that will build our sukkah for us and take it down. Somebody that will drop our lulav in etrog. Somebody, and it's very easy for. We don't want to be bothered with it. As long as it's easy, but don't ask us to lift a finger. But when it comes to everything else, we'll do it. When it comes to going to play golf, we don't send the shaliach to go play golf for us. Then we go ourselves. But when it comes to all the other mitzvot, who do I call? Who's going to handle it for me? Who's going to? And because of this, it became a big business to handle people's religion. And I have no doubt, my Friday night table, with all the delicacies on it, is much more elaborate than my great-grandmother's Friday night table. I have no doubt. But I have no doubt also that her Friday night table was much more worthy in God's eyes. Because she made everything. She touched everything. Her hands touched every single item. My great-grandmother, if she would come to our house and you would tell her, she would say, oh, this chali is delicious. Who made it? You say, we got it from the bakery. She would spit it out. Not because of the money. Not because of the money. That generation is, you give this zechut to a baker. The bakery is for emergencies. But when that becomes the standard where everything is done by others, Again, that's our problem. And that's what the Gemara is saying. At the end of time, God is going to be looking for Mesirut Nefesh. I'm sure you have it here too. When we come to the Beit Midrash every night, we have to circle for parking, and we're circling and circling, and we're making hakafot and hakafot sheniyot, and we're going around and we're going around. And God says, Yishtabach Shemo, look at these people. That's, for us, that's called the Mesirut Nefesh. And the amateur, what does he do? He says, I couldn't find parking, so I went home. But Olam says, I didn't ask you to die. I didn't ask you to give up your life. I just asked you to inconvenience yourself a few minutes for me. I'm looking for this. This is going to save you from the sins. Well, if that's the case, the Kerem Shlomo says that at the end of time, En lanu al mi lehisha'en. The end of time, the only one that we're going to be able to rely on is Avinu Shebashamayim. You know who Avinu is? Yitzhak Avinu, not God. At the end of time, the midah of Yitzhak is going to save us. And he's called Avinu Shebashamayim because Yitzhak Avinu is right there by the Kisei HaKavod. He's in Shamayim. The ashes of Yitzhak are right there. He's sitting in Shamayim. The Gemara is telling us at the end of Sotah that it is Avinu Shebashamayim. It is Yitzhak Avinu Shebashamayim. It's that midah Mesirut Nefesh that's going to save us. We have to coax the children to put on tzitzit. And have every 101 excuses why they shouldn't wear a talit katan. It's too hot, the itches, the straps, they get stuck. 1,000,001 excuses. Where's the Mesirut Nefesh? Where's the Mesirut Nefesh, Rabotai? Anyway, according to this, Avinu Shebashamayim is Yitzhak Avinu. That's going to happen at the end of time. In all the other generations, Yitzhak Avinu's midah is not going to be the primary midah. But in this generation, la'atid lavo, it is. Now, a few pages before this Gemara, there's another Gemara that says that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven to receive the Torah. And the angels protested. The angels tell Moshe Rabbeinu, or the angels tell God, what is he doing here? What is he doing here? What does he want, this guy? So God says he came to get the Torah. They say, we're not letting him get the Torah. We're not giving the Torah to the human beings. And they made a union of angels and they protested. The Torah, and they're picketing. The Torah remains in heaven. We're not giving it. So Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know what to do. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know what to do. He thought it's going to be a walk in the park. He thought he's going to come up, get the Torah, go down, and all of a sudden he's got this whole band of angels that are fighting against him. So he tells God, now what do I do? So God tells him, hold on to my Kisei HaKavod and answer them. Give them an answer. And so Moshe Rabbeinu holds on to the Kisei HaKavod and he gives them an answer. And he tells them, what do you want this Torah for? And one of the main claims that he tells them is, do you have a Yetzer Hara? What was that claim? No, the angels don't have a Yetzer Hara. And once the angels heard that, oh, you're right, we don't have a Yetzer Hara. You know what? You take the Torah. And what does it mean God told them, hold on to the Kisei HaKavod? I always was bothered with this Gemara because God told Moshe, give them an answer. Maybe he doesn't know the answer. You know, if I have a student here and the rabbi comes in and asks a very strong question, I tell the student, answer him. I don't know the answer. Unless I would tell the student to answer if I'm showing him the answer on a piece of paper. I say, answer him. Which is, if I give him the answer, then I'm confident he's going to know the answer. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he must have known the answer, and God must have told him the answer. The angels come along and say, we're going to keep the Torah. So you know what God says to Moshe? Hold on to the Kisei HaKavod. That's the answer. Look at the Kisei HaKavod. What do you see on the Kisei HaKavod? You see the ashes of Yitzhak. Go tell the angels. That's the answer. That they could serve God from here to tomorrow, but it's easy for them. And God says, I'm not interested in easy street. Hold on to the Kisei HaKavod, and that's the answer. Show them the ashes. And therefore he says, do you have a Yetzer Hara? Does this come difficult for you? The angel said, no, the Torah's a breeze. That's why you don't deserve it. Because that's what the Borei was looking for. He's looking for the Mesirut, for the self-sacrifice. And an angel cannot sacrifice for God. And the angels came along and they took the white flag and they said, surrender. It's not for us. The Torah belongs with the Jewish people. And what are they asking? They're not asking for us to fast every single day. In the olden days, in the month of Elul, they used to fast for 30 days. The old timers, they're not asking for us for that level in our generation. But you have to change your attitudes. That if people think that the religion is something that has to be easy, get that out of your mind. It's a mistake. And especially in our generation. And nobody's asking you to give your life up for God. At most, Arizal is saying, in Be'ahaba, think about it. That's as far as we're going to tell you. And in life, here and there, you have to be willing to bear some uncomfortability, some sacrifice. You have to be willing to divest yourself of some sort of desire for the Borei. Oh, if that's the case, I go back to our story. Miriam bat Bilga, we started this whole speech with, she denounced her religion and she married a Greek. And I told you the rabbis didn't react. You know why the rabbis didn't react? The rabbis are very wise. The rabbis don't react until they know the origin. Why did this happen? The rabbis don't react at symptoms. They want to know what caused it. What was the root of this? So they waited. And if you wait long enough, you'll see exactly what brought her to do this. What brought her to convert? What brought her to assimilation? And all of a sudden one day, they see her come into the Beit HaMikdash with her shoe, and she starts to beg on the Mizbeach, Lucas, Lucas. And the rabbis say the following. Lucas is a wolf. You know who in the Torah was called a wolf? One of the tribes was called a wolf. Binyamin. When Yaakov Avinu blessed the tribe of Binyamin, it says Binyamin Ze'ev. Binyamin is a wolf. Why is he called a wolf? What did he do to get this nickname wolf? So the Gemara says, because when God divided the land of Israel amongst the tribes, it was the tribe of Binyamin that merited to get the plot of land where the Mizbeach was. The Mizbeach was in Binyamin's property. Geographically, Binyamin was the host of the altar. So therefore he was called Ze'ev, because the Mizbeach is like a wolf that eats sheep all day long. So therefore they nicknamed Binyamin the Ze'ev, which means the Mizbeach. It's going to be in your section. And the question is asked, why Binyamin? Why did he get the Mizbeach in his section? What did he do to merit that? That's a big zechut. The Gemara Sotah says that when the Jews left Egypt, they got to the sea, Yam Suf. The sea wasn't going anywhere. The Egyptians were behind them and the sea was in front of them. And God says to the people, go forward march. What do you mean forward march? Where are we going? So everybody took a step back, except the tribe of Binyamin. They said, if God says to go, we're going. Where are you going? They didn't have a raft, they didn't have a kayak, they didn't have a canoe. They're walking in until the water gets up to the chinny chin chin, they're over here. And all of a sudden, Borei Olam says, look at the Mesirut Nefesh. I don't want them to drown. At that moment, when it reached the point of no return, The sea split. God said, the one that is willing to sacrifice for me, you are going to be the host of the altar that brings sacrifices. Sacrifice begets sacrifice. The tribe of Binyamin that's nicknamed Ze'ev represents the tribe of Mesirut Nefesh. And this girl comes into the Beit HaMikdash and she takes her shoe and she starts to bang the Mizbeach. And she calls the Mizbeach Ze'ev. You know what she was saying? Binyamin! I'm not interested in this type of religion that's too difficult for me. Do this, don't speak this, don't eat that, don't go there. Lucas. She started to disparage Shevet Binyamin. I'm not interested in Binyamin and his sacrifice and drowning for God and all this business of the Mizbeach. Oh, and the rabbi said, oh, we got it. This is the root. She chose a different religion, a religion that's very easy. She converted to Greek. There's no more permissive religion than the Greeks. The Greeks invented the worship of the body. They invented the Olympics. What are the Olympics? They run around without any clothes on, throwing discus and javelins and jumping all over the place. The God of love, the God of desire. She said, yeah, they don't ask you for anything. You don't have to wear anything. You don't have to do anything. Your God is a God of lust. The religion is based on all sorts of ta'avot. So the rabbi said, she's looking for the religion without any sacrifice. And it came out of her mouth. She took a shoe and she's banging. She wasn't banging the Mizbeach. She was banging Mesirut Nefesh. So the rabbi said, now we know where it came from. And you know where she must have learned it from? She must have learned it from her parents. If anybody in this room is parents, one has to be very careful of the messages we give our children. Because if we come home from work on Friday afternoon and we come along and say, oh, we have to keep Shabbat now, the biggest day of the week now, we got to close the store. Oof. And the kids come along and say, parents not willing to sacrifice. And the kids start to hear that we're not interested in giving for God, then they'll get that attitude. And God forbid that leads to assimilation, because assimilation is the road of least resistance. Do what I want, marry who I want, go. It all starts because they're not educated that religion sometimes is difficult, sometimes it's uphill. But if they're trained at home that that's the way it has to be and that's what God wants, so they're used to it. But she was brought up in a different attitude. She must have heard from her father, too hard this religion. He probably came home from the Beit Mikdash and said, well, I can't take this job anymore, it's a killer. Sometimes I wish I wasn't a Kohen Gadol. Sometimes I just wish I could be a regular guy. My feet all day long, eating all that sacrifices and dealing with the people and all the sins. And she came along and said, my father resents all the service of God. And eventually it affected her to the extent where she hit the Mizbeach, and that was the root of it. And once the rabbis found the root of it, now they locked up the locker of Vilga. Then they threw him out. That's the pshat in the Gemara. And if I tell you tonight, Rabotai, what I'm telling you is very critical. It doesn't start with assimilation. It starts for looking for the easy way out. And once you're looking for the easiest way out, you're going to leave Judaism, because Judaism is not the easiest way out. That's a fact. I'm not going to lie to you and come and it's easy, it's great, it's simple. It's a Mesirut Nefesh, it's work. Lefum Sa'ara Agra. But realize, those that are not willing to accept that, those that are taking their shoe and banging the Mesirut Nefesh, the next step is assimilation. Well, maybe not the next step, but the digression. It's a slippery slope that leads to assimilation. Well, if that's the case, we understand another Gemara at the end of Sukkah. Based on the opinion of the Maharsha. The Gemara says on Hoshana Rabbah, a month from now, we have Hoshana Rabbah. It says they had a custom in the Beit HaMikdash. They used to take the long willows, the arava, and they used to walk around the Mizbeach. And they used to say, Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. They would say, the Mizbeach is beautiful. The Mizbeach is beautiful. The Maharsha says, what was this custom? Yofi lecha Mizbeach. So he says, this was the tikkun of Miriam bat Bilga. Because they felt bad. She came into the Beit HaMikdash and she said, Mizbeach, you're worthless. Lucas, Lucas. So they came along, they made a tikkun. Once a year they would go around the Mizbeach, they would say, the Mizbeach is incredible. The Mizbeach is beautiful. And based on what we're saying tonight, when we see a lady in the year 2016, and she's dressed like our grandmothers were dressed and our great-grandmothers were dressed, to her we say, Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. The Mesirut Nefesh is beautiful. Your Mesirut Nefesh is wonderful. Your Mesirut Nefesh is atoning all the sins of Klal Yisrael. Yofi lecha Mizbeach. And when we say boys coming to the yeshiva every night and studying Torah, learning the most difficult subjects in the Talmud, they could have stayed home and watched TV and involved themselves in all the Havel Havalim that Kollel talks about, and instead they come and they rack their brains to understand the halachot. To them we say, Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. Your sacrifice is beautiful. And to those that keep kosher, and they don't go and exercise all their options to eat in all the terfiyot and all the husbands of the places, and they refrain themselves from these things, to them we say, Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. And for those that filter their internet, we say, Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. And to any time a Jew gets up early in the morning to go to the minyan, and he struggles to get out of bed like I do every single morning. People come to say, Rabbi, how do you do it every morning? I say, I fight every morning. I never had an easy morning yet. They think in the morning when the alarm gets off at 5 o'clock, I jump up. It doesn't happen like that. It never happened once. Every morning is a battle. Every morning is a struggle. Every morning I wake up more tired than the next day. They think, oh, the rabbi, it's easy. Nothing's easy. We have to pull ourselves out of the bed. That's the Mesirut Nefesh. That's what God's looking for. Thank God He's not asking us to join the Inquisition. Thank God He's not asking us to, Hazbe Shalom, God forbid, other types of... it's minimal in our generation, but we have to be willing to even do that. Yofi lecha Mizbeach, Yofi lecha Mizbeach. Keep that mantra in your mind. En lanu lehisha'en ela al avinu shebashamayim. Yitzhak Avinu. That is the calling of our generation. And I will conclude. I was at a Holocaust memorial last year, and they had Rabbi Lau, chief rabbi of Israel in Tel Aviv, spoke. He was a survivor of Buchenwald. And then they had I wish I remembered his name. He was a Hazan from Toronto, also a survivor. And he got up, older man, white beard, a casquette he was wearing, and he told a story. He said that he survived, obviously, but his Rebbe was taken away. And as his Rebbe was being taken away on the cattle car, his Rebbe's head was out the window. And he says, I told my Rebbe, why are you so lucky that God chose you to make the Kiddush Hashem and He didn't take me? This is what the Hazan tells his Rebbe. What merit did you do that you can die for God and I didn't get this merit? He says, and you know what my Rebbe told me? He says, no, my student, I didn't choose to do this. I'm being taken against my will. I didn't choose to die, Al Kiddush Hashem. They're doing this against my will. He says, but you are going to live. And every day you're going to be able to make a conscious decision out of your own free will to sacrifice for God. You are better than me. The living who are not being coerced, we can choose to sacrifice. That's greater. Tomorrow morning when we get up for minyan, when we get dressed, when we control our mouths, when we watch our eyes, this is our decision. Nobody's putting a gun to our head to tell us what to do. The Rebbe was telling him, and he said, the fact that you're living and you're going to decide to serve God on your own volition, that's greater. They're pulling me, Ba'al Korki, against my will. That's not as great as the free will that you're going to exercise. And that's what I say to all of you tonight. And this is the lesson we must impart to our children. That for the religion to mean something, we have to be willing to give up something for it. And it's worthy. It's worth it to give up for this religion. It's very worth it. It's a good investment. And if we want to save ourselves from the troubles of the end of time, the troubles that the Gemara says, La'atid lavo, we must adopt the practice of Yitzhak. Ana karibit nafshai kamach. I have sacrificed my life for you. And today I say to the Kahal that has convened here tonight, that Be'ezat Hashem, in that merit, that we accept upon ourselves not to take the road of least resistance, that we're willing to give a little extra to the Borei Olam. In that merit, Borei Olam will shower us, like the Arizal said, with a great amount of bounty and a great amount of prosperity. And Be'ezat Hashem, in the few coming weeks, they're already setting up the chairs in the courtroom already. Already the judges preparing all the courtroom for the big night of Rosh Hashanah. I have no doubt that with our good intentions, the Borei will judge us favorably. L'shana tova, borechet, amen ve'amen.